Welcome guys, gals, and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is my jubilant host,
Brian.
Welcome Brian. I really appreciate the incredibly precise and careful way you tried to put down that cup of coffee exactly in the middle of my intro. It's that kind of co-work which makes it really easy to be stuck inside with you for such a long period of time.
Just one question for you, Joel. What exactly do I have to be jubilant about?
The sun is shining. I'm making a steak.
Yeah, look at me sitting outside
on.
in the sun, Joel.
Yes, because you go outside in the sun.
You're cooking. I'm really excited for that. I'm really jubilant about your. Actually, that's not fair. Joel can cook very well. To be fair.
Also, the classic trope of Brian outside in sunshine.
Joel, have you ever told the soup story on the podcast?
Oh, we must have told the soup story.
I think you have to tell the soup story.
Would it please you?
Yes, it would. I'm going to be really coffee this episode, and it's because I accidentally inhaled a bit of honeycomb. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
No, it's the where you put baking soda and
No, it was honeycomb. It was basically we went for a walk to a local independent
cafe,
coffee shop cafe called Storyboard, which is still open for takeaway and socially distanced selling of various goods they have, like a sourdough bread that we got as well, and we got a treat for ourselves, which is like this really quite tasty but incredibly crumbly honeycomb kind of homemade crunchy kind of thing. And
crunchy for American audiences. It's a Cadbury snack. They do Cadbury's cream eggs. It's like that kind of like honeycombish thing covered in chocolate.
Yeah, absolutely delicious. As soon as you bit into it, it shattered like a wall full of asbestos, and just like completely got inhaled into both of our lungs, and you've been choking to death all day.
Yeah. So the soup story. Do it, please.
Will we say what we're here for first?
Oh yeah, this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
This is Buffy Boys talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, season 4, episode 9, Something Blue.
Yeah.
So we'll get into all that in a second. First, let's have the soup story. And as with all stories I tell in this vein, I will start and then you will interrupt me at random points to tell salacious details from the story. Essentially, when we started dating, I presume we're talking about the same soup story.
Yeah, we are.
Soup in quotation marks.
Yeah.
I was basically an incredibly thoughtful, sweet person who wanted to cook for my new boyfriend. I don't know when this was. It was like 6 months, a year after we started dating.
So it would have been when you were living in on Blessing Street. So that was September 2011 to June 2012. So it was in the first year and a half of us dating. Yeah.
Sure. And I don't have what one would call an extensive culinary background or ability to, how you say, feed myself or live prior to when we started dating.
One of the things that Joe would do he would be like, oh, I have made this dinner, and what it'd be was basically I introduced him to stir fry oil, which I don't use generally, but I was like, oh, this is an easy thing to use to make things taste a little bit nice. And he would just put like maybe a centimeter of oil in the bottom of a stir fry thing and just vaguely heat up the vegetables in it and deliver cold, greasy, oily vegetables as dinner.
Listener, imagine how you would cook if you had never seen or experienced cooking of any fashion before and just heard of it by rough description. That was how I cooked. Yeah. So I was very thoughtful and lovely and kind and romantic, and I made Brian a soup, a delicious, creamy, succulent soup. And I had heard, again, by third hand, the idea that, like, you throw a dash of this in, a little bit of this kind of spice up, make it creamy, make it thick, all the kind of things people like about soup. And so this was actually a packet soup. We're not talking about anything that involved a hand blender or anything like that. No. It's a packet soup. Just and I was like, well, I've often seen you make this with water, but sometimes people add a touch of milk to give it a bit of creaminess. I was like, what if... And I was like thinking to myself, I've cracked this. What if I make the entire thing with milk? Seemed foolproof. I made it. I tasted it. I was like, that is correct. And served it to Brian. And it was essentially a buttercream fondant kind of texture.
You don't want your soup to have dents in it when you put your spoon through it.
Yeah, so you could actually turn it upside down and it did not come out of the bowl. No. That was a specific thing.
It was disgusting.
Brian, to your eternal credit, you did try to eat some of it and you very gently said, this is not food.
Which is, I wouldn't mind, except that the only thing that I have any actual phobias about are all food related, and they're all about food consistency, and food rejection and stuff. And
I also around that time also made you sausages for breakfast, and what I basically did was char the casing of the sausage and then just serve you a charred casing that had like raw meat inside of it.
Yeah,
it was a challenging period in our life, but as you said, I have improved.
Yeah, you're good. You're good at cooking these days. Okay, I'm going to give you the Buffy on summary, and then we'll move on from there.
Please do.
So this is Something Blue. It is season 4, episode 9, and it was first released on November 30th, 1999. It was written by Tracy Forbes, who last wrote Beer Bad for us. This is one of the second of 3 episodes she writes. And it was directed by Nick Mark. And that Mark is with a CK, which is very confusing.
Oh.
But, to each their own. He directed 10... This is the first episode of Buffy he's directed. He directs 7 episodes of Buffy overall. He directed 10 episodes of Veronica Mars as well. One of the episodes of Buffy he actually directs is Conversations with Dead People in season 7, which is obviously a very good episode. He directed season 1 episode of Gilmore Girls, which was the one where Rory and Dean break up because he says he loves her, and she's just like, she freezes and she goes off and kisses Tristan. Remember that one?
Classic.
Yeah. And he actually also directed 9 episodes of Northern Exposure, which is obviously quite good too. Okay, so here's your Buffy on summary. Riley and Buffy date. Depressed, Willow casts a spell that enforces her will, including her casual remarks. Amy is briefly deratted. Giles goes blind. Xander falls himself, chased by demons. Spike and Buffy agree to marry. Willow is offered Anya's job by D'Hoffryn, but declines, putting things right before demons overwhelm the gang. I'm not sure if that's true that she is taking Anya's old job specifically.
I think that's editorial, and I also think, okay, it is significant that Amy appears, but
I wouldn't mention it, yeah.
There's only so much space in this.
It's a funny note, but
I think a more useful note would have been to mention the fact that Buffy tells Riley she's engaged, and that freaks him out.
So one of the thing that we said we're going to talk about this week for our bronze banter, actually briefly, one of the things that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago was I was talking about Fiona Apple because there was a reference to her in an episode. I think it was in not Pangs, Wild at Heart, okay. I think, and it was really nice because Kieran, my brother, was listening to that obviously, and this week on Friday, just a couple of days ago, Fiona Apple's new long-awaited album came out. And it got a 10 from Pitchfork, the first album since Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which is a very significant thing. Pitchfork 10s are few and far between, and Pitchfork are full of shit in many ways. But, I tend to agree with them reasonably often.
Your brand of being full of shit.
Yeah, exactly. But he was like, oh, and you just recommended Fiona Apple a couple of weeks ago, Brian. So that's good. And I was like, yeah, I am cool. You're right. But yeah, go off and listen to the new Fiona Apple album. It's super fucking good.
Brian turned over about maybe 20:08 in the morning, saw that it had gotten a 10, immediately turned to Google and started playing the album.
Yeah. Well, that's my want.
That's the magic.
Okay, so what we said we'd talk about for Bronze Banter was A Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which we watched during the week.
So, so many good things come out sometimes, and it's often this weird thing. It's like, oh, why did we choose to do? Why haven't we seen this? Why haven't we seen that? Etc. There's just like a lot of good content, which is like a great period of media to be in. So in 2019, the film Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Celine Sciamma, was released. It's gotten a lot of strong critical.
It was released reasonably limitedly, so I'd say there's going to be a wider release at some point.
A lot of strong critical response to it, both from a directorial and artistic, cinematic point of view, and also within the queer community, because it's a very strong queer film and relationship between two women, which in many ways is, like, I would say, one of the more underserved categories within queer cinema, particularly one where nobody dies.
Yes.
Necessary spoilers, I suppose. But yeah, so we were like, this is great. We know we're going to love it. Put it on. Period piece in French. This might be a slightly, privileged or academic position, but I'm always surprised when people so immediately are like, oh, it's a foreign film or it's not in English. I won't engage with it.
Yeah.
But I think also that is probably a symptom of the fact that we watch television of all shows with reading subtitles. Yeah, so it's not a barrier for us. We put it on maybe 10 or 15 minutes into it, and I look over to Brian, and you are, I think the word I would use is enraptured. I knew straight away that it was going to be one of your coveted top 10s, or 10 out of 10s. But yeah, it was, I'm sure, Brian, you've kind of more to say about it, but my feeling was that it was a beautifully shot film. Sumptuous in terms of its setting and its acting, but not in that kind of toothachingly sweet way the period dramas are sometimes. Absolutely. It was warm, deep in its setting and its
period films usually use like gold, dark reds, crimson kind of notes visually to denote kind of like and lots of like really a lot of darkness in terms of the literal candles and stuff used. That tends to be you think your Amadeuses and your Barry Lyndons, whereas this was very much shot with a very faded pastel, very clear blue tonal palette, which was really refreshing and definitely didn't feel historically inaccurate for the visual representation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Only really kind of one man in the film who's a throwaway extra who's a fisherman or boatman who delivers them to the island they're on, which is off Brittany, and I think it's around like say 1800, 1790, that kind of period.
Sure.
The rest of it is led by obviously two main women actors, a servant girl, a mother, and some women from the village, and just intensely authentic, sincere, warm portrayals from everyone, and one which again is often quite difficult in a language that isn't your primary language, in a period which is historical, to convey authenticity and just be like, oh, people in the past were kind of people too, to a certain degree. And I think it did a really good job of showing, you imagine this kind of formal, the way people talk and interact, and then showing that they did do that, and then they went to private spaces and then just acted like we do. Yeah, and there was just maybe a more formality to certain interactions. But yeah, what did you think about it, Brian?
I loved it. I loved it so much. I had a weep at the end of the film, and it wasn't. I will often weep at sadness. Sadness will make me cry a lot, and there was a lot of sadness to the film, but the ending of the film made me weep on the basis of a completely other inexplicable set of emotions. That kind of
to go laterally a little bit, I would equate it to the way you feel. One feels very strong emotion at, say, a concert.
Yeah,
or music, and it might be slightly different to how you would relate it. But it wasn't because it was sad or happy or it was plot related. It was just an intensity. Which
there's definitely that. There's also just like the kind of the otherworldness of an emotion that is entirely unto its setting and entirely unto its story, that doesn't have a comparative point in interaction day-to-day life, but that you recognize immediately and completely in a character. Yeah, and and kind of a relief, a sadness, a beauty. It was really stunning. One of the most fascinating parts of the film is that, we talk a lot in this show about male gaze, and
female gaze and boys, etc. Yeah,
the male gaze, and this film was entirely removed from the male gaze in every possible way. So if you think about the movie Blue is the Warmest Color, a movie mostly about women, but has been criticized, and lesbian women or queer women, has been heavily criticized over the years because of the use of the male gaze in a directorial perspective. The sex scenes are extended and very much didn't have the authenticity of actual queer sex experience, essentially.
This criticized from within the production as well. Like, this is a known issue with the film.
100%. It's a great film. Blue is the Warmest Color is a stunning movie. But this film specifically derived power from the female gaze. So from women, it was specifically one woman having... The film is portrayed through one perspective of observance, and a point of observance that has narrative importance. That means that you are drawn into this character and the way that this character sees the woman who she comes to fall in love with, or very much like. And observance, perspective, and tone are they're not just themes in the film, but they're plot. Which is just as a non-queer movie, I thought it was incredible, like 10 out of 10. As a queer movie, it's like it's probably it's up there for me with like Brokeback Mountain, which I honestly think is a genuine masterpiece. Moonlight, obviously. God, there's not many more, but it was incredible. Loved it. If you get a chance to go watch it in the cinema, absolutely do. If you don't, go ahead and download it somewhere.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting things about it is obviously it's about a painter. It's very painterly focused, and we often talk about things cinematically being framed in a painting like fashion. The kind of the old stick of calling something like a Renaissance painting, etc. If it's a tableau, but again, there's a grandioseness to that. There are very painterly frames in this and shots, but they're of an intimate and understated style, and I actually think it's an unusual example of diegetic and non-diegetic cinematography, where usually we have non-diegetic music, which is your soundtrack, and occasionally it'll transition into diegetic, which is when the soundtrack, it turns out, it's actually someone's listening to it on their iPod and they take off their headphones. That's
funny enough, there's no non-diegetic music in this movie as well.
Yeah, exactly. But this, you actually do a transition here where you see both a transition between non-diegetic and diegetic viewpoints and painterly frames to an extent, because she is observing the framing. And
it's free and direct discourse.
Yes, absolutely,
cinematographically. So I mean, the perspective of the camera tends to take on the perspective of the character, though, and I don't mean like literally seeing through her eyes, but
like in Doom,
but portraying things as she's understanding them.
Yeah, as she's thinking about them, as she's framing them in her mind. They're equally framed, but it's not heavy-handed. It's not Sherlock in his mind palace. It's natural and it's competent.
It's a masterpiece.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, speaking of masterpieces, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Something Blue.
Something Blue. So yeah, this is a very formulaic, and I don't say that in a negative sense.
No, me neither.
It's the genre formula, the monster of the week to a certain degree. And what we have is that coming off of Oz's departure, Willow is growing in her power. She casts a spell which has unintended consequences, and what she says becomes true and leads to a number of hilarious and difficult situations. And that's really it. And it's a crux and it's a crucible by which to explore her feelings, her responsibility, Buffy and Spike's interactions, things like that. It's not necessarily, like, I think the heaviest example of that, the most intense example of that is probably once more feeling, like down the line, where you take something which is like a structure which is used to expand on the feelings, but it's a lighter version of that. And that's kind of it. I say, if first impressions, what do you think of the episode?
Oh, thoroughly enjoyable, thoroughly grand. Like, have my criticisms of it. I think tonally a bit off. I was saying to you before the episode, I think it's kind of disconnected in the season. I think that's a lot, though. In season 4, there's a lot of disconnection. But I like it.
I think the weird thing about it is it's definitely not a bad episode. It was an enjoyable episode. There's some interesting stuff in it. It's not an episode of Buffy you will remember.
Oh, really?
I don't think generally. I think you would have to, if you went down, and we're not even talking about the classics from season 1 to 3, but if you went down episodes, like, it's an episode which has no clear place in the season to a certain degree.
It also has very little ramification for the rest of the season, so that really, really adds to it. Like, it does feel very floating.
And it does require a certain amount of, obviously, plot contrivance, in the sense that Willow accidentally causes these effects. So to motivate that for the various scenes in which they are funny and interesting, she is separated somewhat arbitrarily from the rest of the cast for a period of time. It's just they can't get in touch with her, as opposed to, it's much later in the episode where she's actually kidnapped by the Hoffer, and mostly it's just that they're trying to figure out what's happening and she's somewhere else getting upset with other things. It also, I mean, I think it imposes a distance on Willow's character while trying to have it be a Willow-centric episode, which I think is a kind of a bad mishmash of things. So Willow is almost impossible to understand her motivations and her approach in this episode from a viewer perspective, as in we have the nominal reasons. So Willow, Oz is sent for his things to be taken from the dorm room, so she arrives in the dorm room and none of Oz's stuff is there anymore, which is definitely an upsetting thing. All his plectrums are missing.
Exactly, all 700 of them. And she's also watching Buffy and Riley's relationship develop. So I think those two things very much inspire her to try to process her emotions in this way. However, to do this, she has to kind of allow a annoyance and a rattiness to come through that isn't typical of Willow.
A petulance, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. And a flippance of just her movement and her behavior, which is unusual for a character who is so controlled. And of course, that's the counterpoint to controlled characters, is usually that when they do become unmoored, that they really lash out. But she doesn't really lash out. She just says a couple of kind of bitchy things. And yeah, I don't know. I found it just a bit, just like, oh, you know, they sat around the writer's room this week and they said, oh, yeah, Willow is sad about things. We should figure that out, I suppose. Thankfully, Hush is next week, so she doesn't have to mourn her relationship with Oz anymore after that.
So, speaking of lesbians, we have at the top of the episode... I
actually really like that note. Go on.
It's quite nice. Buffy runs into Riley, being very helpful. And actually, I think this is the first episode of the season where I feel like Riley acts the age he supposedly is. Because, like, if he's a TA, like, he's not meant to be a grad student, right?
He is meant to be a graduate.
He is meant to be a grad student.
Yeah.
So let's say...
He's definitely not supposed to be an undergrad.
Sure. Yeah, cool, sure. So let's say in the American system, like, he's what? He's like 24, 25 or something.
24, 25, I think would be about right.
Yeah. I think he acts a bit closer to that in this episode, which is nice. But she runs into...
Rather than you think in previous episodes he acted older or younger?
Older. I think sometimes he looks like a 45-year-old man playing this role.
That's true.
As much as I like him, he has that high school, you know, Luke Perry... now or that, you know, recently kind of vibe. Anyway,
dead?
No, not dead. Who is dead recently?
Luke Perry?
No, the guy from Glee, the other guy from Glee.
He died years ago.
But I didn't know this.
Yeah, well, there's a scene.
I don't mean
we know that's
thing. I mean the
the other guy, Puck.
Puck.
We came across a TikTok that I showed you where someone highlighted a scene where he's like, oh, maybe I'll go to prison or die
by
or
2030
or both.
Yeah.
And that is what happened to him. He was arrested on child pornography charges and killed himself in prison.
Yeah. Yikes. Bit on the yikes scale. But swinging back to my point about lesbians, Riley is putting up a banger in the common room for Sunnydale U's lesbian alliance, which I think is like a very early 2000s way of phrasing. I think it's also a very American way. The gay straight alliance is very American or North American concept. That's not really something we have here. No. It tickles me because I imagine the lesbian alliance is from the Northern Kingdoms. Do you know what I mean? There's something a little martial about it. There's some foreshadowing there with Willow meeting Tara in the next episode, which funnily is actually not obviously through the lesbian alliance, but it's through the like.
Yeah, definitely not a lesbian alliance.
The undercover lesbian alliance, essentially. But Buffy's like asking Riley, "Oh, is there something you want to tell me?" And there's a very screen grabber moment. Riley is like, "Yes, Buffy, I am a lesbian."
And I like the note for the character as well of him just being like, "Of course, I'll help my friends in the lesbian alliance hang up a banner." He
has Thor energy, where it's like Thor, protector of lesbians, kind of.
What? Thor, protector of lesbians?
Yeah, you know this. It's
no.
Chris, you do. Chris Hemsworth has been like in photos at like fan meetups where they like women have gotten him to hold up the like the lesbian flag, and there's like Twitter posts about how you know, Thor in character would be like a really like inclusive person and would be like helping wingmanning women to find other women. It's like this is a thing. This is a trope. Okay. But that like Thor would be like, absolutely, you know, bring all of your lesbian friends, that kind of thing. Look, it's a thing.
Okay, I believe it.
Big strong man is real nice to, you know, women who need help in safe space kind of thing. It's that vibe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fair, okay. I mean, I'd imagine like lesbian alliances definitely have a tendency to need people to get high things for them sometimes, you know?
Well, so do you. So
yeah, I do.
It's a common problem in the world.
God.
And so, yeah, Riley is very likable in this episode, I have to say. I think he's less out of the box corn-fed tropes, and he's more kind of, he likes Buffy on a picnic, but he does a very lovely thing where he has told her where they're going to go on a picnic and then realizes that he's been practicing the conversation where he actually asks her in his head, but hasn't had that conversation yet. And then on the picnic he has this weird monologue, like my monologue about how he just really likes to drive around and is trying to convince Buffy, who apparently doesn't know how to drive, that driving is like a really fun thing to do. It's all very like charming, I think.
Charming, but also people who can drive are monsters, so who knows?
Well, not us. which may become driving may become one of those skills in this current climate where we're going to be like, maybe we should learn how to do that,
so we can drive away from the coronavirus monsters.
So we can drive from the virus.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think the obvious central motivating element of this is that Buffy and Spike are magically compelled to believe that they should get married.
Yeah, and thus the something blue of the title. Though, of course, we have multiple interpretations. Mm-hmm. So, what else is something blue?
Willow is quite blue.
Willow's blue. She's sad.
Down in the dumps.
You know what else is something blue?
I'm going to guess the Hoffrin.
The Hoffrin is something blue, yeah. There you go. She's down in the dumps. She does a spell. It goes wacky and wrong. One of the things she says is, have my will done. And basically what happens is that because she doesn't genuinely want to be healed from the Oz thing, her emotions aren't healed by that. And instead, her fits of passion are what might have my passions be done, I think is what she says. It's what she's passionate about. So she lashes out at Giles, who berates her for not turning up to do a spell with him to make Spike tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And she tells him you can't see what's going on, and he goes blind. And then she's getting annoyed about Buffy, so she says, "You should just marry Spike." It's very flippant, very it's very farcical.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does this great thing which Buffy does a lot, where the central conceit is just that Buffy and Spike are going to get married, and they propose. Mm-hmm. With that comes a lot of other personality changes, which are interesting for the episode, but not necessarily attending to the spells. Buffy gets a lot ditzier, and also just what often happens whenever her personality is changed, she gets less concerned with danger. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't help her friends as much when demons are bursting in through the window. Asks Giles to walk her down the aisle. Like things that wouldn't make sense even if.
Yeah, the moment where he's touched, she's like, "Buffy, thank you," and he's like, "No, this is ridiculous. Stop that."
It's very good.
It was good, yeah.
And serving Spike
98.6 degree Fahrenheit blood.
Yeah, exactly. Like the ideal human body temperature out of a Kiss the Librarian novelty mug.
Yeah.
It's very iconic.
That's pretty great.
But no, it's great. I think this is a great episode that shows that Spike is a very solid member of the cast. James Marsters is a very strong addition. He can banter just as well as all the rest of them. He brings his own interesting kind of lines and passions and
literally the TV show passions. You mean?
He is it? No, it's not passions. It's not dark passion.
That's passions.
Okay. He likes watching his stories, and he's still insecure about Angel. Mm-hmm. He's like, "Don't talk about Angel. What would Angel want to do? What kind of flowers would Angel want?"
I like the point where he's like, "So wait, how did you guys foil my plans all those years? Because you're all shit."
Yeah. There's a whole thing about that, and basically that kind of drives a lot of the episode. Them trying to figure out why are Buffy and Spike falling in love with each other, and obviously perhaps not intentionally, but there is a lot of inherent thematic foreshadowing here for the fact that they do actually end up in a relationship in the future.
For sure. There's a lot of foreshadowing in this episode in general. So obviously it foreshadows a lot of Willow's complacency with using magic to solve her problems, with her vengeance tendencies. Vengeances. What with the Hoffrin seeing some potential in her to wreak havoc in the world as Anya did. Mm-hmm. And then additionally, obviously, Buffy and Spike ending up in a relationship. Oh yeah, and also I think this episode probably is closest related as an episode to Tabula Rasa in season 6.
Season 6, I want to say.
It's 6. It's after Xander and Anya don't get married, right?
That would make sense.
But yeah, it's a nice, easygoing episode. There's a lot of funny elements to it.
There's actually quite an important narrative development in this episode, which is kind of understated. Which is that it establishes Anya's backstory.
Oh yeah, for
that
sure.
Anya was, not that she was a vengeance demon, which up until now is like, what the fuck does that mean? What does anything mean in Buffy from a magical point of view? But that
she was a human who was turned into
exactly that she was human.
Mm-hmm.
She was human 1120 years ago, and was elevated to be a demon by the vengeance demons of Arashanmar. which the Hoffring leagues, and she did that for a certain amount of time and then was descended back to being human.
I always find it very surprising how long the Hoffring lasts as a character in the show.
Yeah, like he obviously goes straight through, and he's a major character in the comics as well.
Was he?
Yeah. So after magic is banished from the world at the end of the comics, they form a new magical council of various magical people who've appeared in both series to try and bring it back. And he turns out to be killing them all to take the power in a Highlander fashion.
Fun. Is the Hoffring in Angel?
No, but there are very Hoffring related creatures later in Angel.
Sure.
So yeah, but I think that's actually a really key part of Anya's story, because up until now she was just a demon, and showing that it's again literally humanizing her, but giving her an arc where she can kind of become more of maybe the person that she was to a certain degree, and not rationalizing her being in the cast and all that kind of. I think in the group. Yeah.
I think tonally as well in this episode, Anya's portrayal was pretty apt and pretty much more settled into the character who she does become, which is like, silly, fun, and also like a note of like seriousness, and I just like it.
And I always think the interesting thing about Anya is that she never really feels like she's introduced, insofar as she just
continues appearing.
Yeah, there's no episode where her character is kind of really strongly defined. It's just immediately like she's actually quite knowledgeable about occult things for obvious reasons, but she often brings that to bear a lot. She's like, oh, it's the polar demon, you have to drown it, etc. It gives all these options for scenes with her that is knowledge you actually can't get from any of the other characters. So I just think from the inside baseball of how you put the episode together, it's quite interesting.
She's good lubrication to keep things going.
Yeah, exactly. She's a greasy wheel. I enjoyed that, and obviously the Hoffring stuff is going to come back in future. It has that like classic Joss Whedon moment where he's like, "Oh, I'm very disappointed. You've rejected my offer."
Well, like swelling music and then cut off.
Yeah. Well, here's my talisman. If you change your mind, give us a chance, and then banishes her. Yeah, which is very enjoyable.
I do like the Hoffring as a character generally. Just I like his tone, which is very like, oh girl, you're doing such a great job. There's a little gayness to him, which I think is quite
absolutely
fun.
I would say the Hoffring may be the demon who is replicating any friendly demon in the two shows going forward, because if you think of, I can't remember his name, but the one Clem, and obviously you might actually remember in Angel there's like a really imposing, not Lauren, a really imposing horned eye ring, nipple ring, scary demon called Skip.
Okay.
Who gargs like the gates to hell or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, Cordelia, you're back. How's it going? Haven't seen you in a while." That kind of thing. So like he's like hyper friendly, and I think it's an evolution of this form of like accessible demon, which is something they're trying to develop.
Okay. I don't remember him, but I believe it.
He eventually betrays them, and it's the whole thing. But yeah, I thought it was a fun episode. I have to say, I think it was
the design of the demons. There were just lots of demons in this episode.
Xander was a demon magnet, and that kind of motivated a lot of great demon design.
Yeah, there's lots of like weird horns and just fun stuff there.
It definitely made me think like Xander probably has a thing of skin of any Scooby, because he's like trying to help, or he makes an attempt to help Willow, and she's like, "Oh boohoo, what pain do you have? I live in a basement," and he immediately gets pissed off and walks away.
Yeah, and he's kind of mean to her later on. He's like, "Oh, is Willow finally over her boohoo sad me stuff?" And it's like,
to be fair, everyone then says we're all over it. We're all sick of it.
she's mourning a relationship that lasted longer than Buffy's one with Parker, and Buffy's relationship with Parker managed to mourn it for like 6 episodes, and they slept together once. So give Willow a bit of time to be sad about Oz, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We see a little bit more Giles' apartment in this episode as well, which I enjoy, because I like
the bathroom. We
see the bathroom. Also, I noticed that his bed, at least now, is at the top of that staircase, but it's just like on a platform up there.
Yeah. Like that's how we saw it in Passions.
In my head, in my mental scape of it, it's always been a bedroom, but it's actually like the platform in
it's a loft.
Actually, yeah, a loft, exactly. It's the word for this, which was good. But they have this kind of dynamic then of like Spike's around, he's kind of chained up, he's kind of not. We're bantering, him and Giles are being English together. Yeah, it's a really it's good friction.
It's a compelling dynamic.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. I kind of feel weird about this episode because, like, obviously the next episode is Hush, so it just feels like it pales in comparison.
Maybe for next week we should just release 40 minutes of no audio.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
People would enjoy that.
God, I'm gonna have to do so much reading for Hush. Fuck. Oh well. Okay. There's a lot of like fun demon design, and just as a genre episode, I feel like this is quite good fun. The spell doing with Willow, she's surrounded by cool like candles, and
in the shower.
There's something quite like Sabrina 60s-esque about the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know, which is fun.
It was a fun episode. It was just taking the plot over. I think this is the episode that gave me the most motivation so far to be like, okay, her and Riley are like a legitimate possibility, because there's
I think the ultimate like undermining of that relationship is there from the beginning.
Yeah, like well, even in this, like she very specifically, and even though she writes against it by the end,
mm-hmm.
she does say something very critical, which is like she feels that is it possible to have a relationship which is as intense and as emotionally fulfilling without the potential for conflict.
Sure.
And she claims that she's gotten over that. She hasn't.
Yeah.
That is potentially because of the very formative and very damaging interactions she's had since she was 15 or 16. That is a key part of Buffy's personality. That's why her and Riley, will peter out in that respect.
Sure.
But no, I was like, he is a nice guy, and he's trying to figure her out. And
the last line of the episode is so unusual. It's like she's like, Riley, you don't know anything about women, and then he says, but you're going to teach me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you say so.
Yeah. So obviously the whole thing, she also like tells him that she's engaged to a guy named Spike, and it's all very like, she is very confusing and very flighty from the outside.
Okay, do you want to move into the dusting?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, a couple of Buffy bits for you. Oh yeah, there's a really nice part where Spike is further develops his perspective as the kind of truth teller, where Buffy and Giles are both like, oh, Willow's doing fine, not worried about her. And then he says, she's hanging on by like a thread. What are you talking about? And that was just a nice little note, I thought. The dress shop in the episode where Buffy is looking at the wedding dresses is the same dress shop that Cordelia worked in.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There's a Brave Little Toaster reference, which is a 1987 animated movie, which I remember watching a lot, but looking back, it's kind of nightmare fuel territory. It was very weird.
Nightmare fuel, that's a word I haven't heard, a set of words I haven't heard in a long time.
Really?
It's very there, but I just haven't said it or thought about it in a while.
Oh, okay. Willow gets drunk and is having a dance at the bronze.
She gets drunk. She has half a Bud Light.
Yeah. And then maybe drops it, maybe kicks it over, maybe has it hiding up her sleeve. We're not sure.
And then there's a reference then, obviously, to Beer Bag, written by the same writer, where she says, I went all, don't drink, kids.
But the song playing while she's having a bop, and she's like, this song is great, is All the Small Things by Blink-182, for whatever reason.
Very specific.
Mm-hmm. And very interestingly, this episode has been widely seen as a Joss Whedon response to fan theorizing. So obviously because Joss Whedon is known to have read a lot of Buffy forums and stuff, and one of the obviously thing that was happening there was that people will be shipping Buffy and Spike. So this was him like being like, lol, here's your Buffy and Spike shipping moment. And this is something that is written extensively by Justine Larbelestier. Anyway, I'm not sure. I feel so bad whenever I can't pronounce people's surnames. But
it's more I think it's more important you take it wrong at it, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I hate that like nonsense of like, I'm not even going to try that.
Hate it.
Yeah. Anyway, so she wrote an essay about just fan interaction and forum interaction with the show, and this is one of the points she notes. I think that's all my significant Buffy bits.
So I would just note that at the end, and this kind of transitions like crosses over a little bit with fashion, which seems like a long time.
Go on.
At the end, Willow's wearing it when she's being apologetic and trying to right her wrong. She wears a T-shirt that says, "I speak no evil anymore." Yeah,
that was funny.
And obviously, there is the note that in passing, she does de-rat Amy, who has been ratting since early in season 3. And like the actress like fully appears for that scene
naked for like 3 seconds.
Yeah, which I always thought was a very unusual.
Yeah, I always found it very, very, very odd. She's not going to appear now again until season 6.
Yeah, wild. Like she came on for a non-speaking role for 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're someone sitting there in 1999, big fan of Buffy, and Amy appears for like 3 seconds, you'd be like, anyway, you have your mind blown. Actually, one quick note as well is that at the end of the episode, Buffy is before Willow turns everything back. They're like, oh, it must be a spell that Willow cast, and Buffy's like, oh, it obviously didn't affect me. And she says, I probably only escaped it because I'm the Slayer. Probably some kind of natural immunity. It's actually just delivered so well. It was really funny. And one last note, actually. There is a point at which Willow, while drunk, says that she's not drowning, wading. And I was wondering if that's a Stevie Smith reference. So Stevie Smith being a British poet from the early 20th century who had a quite famous poem called Not Waving But Drowning. I'm not sure.
So I also thought it was a slightly mixed metaphor because what Xander Hicks said was, are you drowning your sorrows? It doesn't work to be wading your sorrows.
Yeah.
But yeah, and one little bit of continuity I enjoyed was that when Buffy somehow procures cake toppers for their wedding cake, they're both blonde.
Yeah, true.
Which is kind of unusual, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall.
There you
go. That was the episode. It was effing episode. And it was enjoyable.
Fashion notes. As we both noted during the episode, Buffy's hair goes from wavy to flat to wavy at multiple points during the episode.
Like very wavy to like completely flat. Yeah.
Or straight, wavy hair, I think is
the word.
Her wavy hair is awful. Whoever told her to like put a bit of mousse in her hair that day and it'll look great lied to her.
And otherwise, in terms of fashion, at one point Xander is wearing a baseball tee, which actually looks, I was like, quite nice. Like,
I wonder why you think that, Joel.
I know I'm wearing one right now, but I was also like, obviously I think this is something people will wear nowadays.
Yeah, but it has like a vanilla like flower on it for some reason.
Yeah, I was into it. I also was thinking about during this episode, fashion wise, that these people don't wear the same clothes twice.
True,
they really don't.
Yeah. At one point, Willow was wearing a jumper. When she's out walking around with Buffy, who's patrolling and ends up like staking a vampire very casually. But I was like, oh, that's a nice jumper. And then it zoomed out and it turned out to be like a very tight poncho. And I was like, that's disgusting. Why would you ever do that to me?
So, what next?
Death count. Do you have a death count for us there, Joe?
No. So, short on death in this episode. 2 non-human deaths. 1 vampire functionally dusted by Buffy. And a Sir Parvo demon, which is Xander drowns in the grotty sink in his basement.
Indeed. Okay, great.
That's it.
Okay, and do you have a rating for me there, Joel?
Something we haven't done in a while, or haven't kept track of in a while. Maybe just hasn't been.
Giles being knocked out.
I
don't think it's happened in a while. Yeah.
I think he's doing better. Although he has fallen down a lot.
Yeah, he fell down in this episode.
He did. Ratings. What will I give this episode? I will give this episode a 7.7 half finished bug likes.
Okay, great. I'm actually going to give it 8.1 because that's what I've written down.
That's good. Kiss good.
Yeah. Kiss the Librarians out of 10. Yeah.
8.1 kiss the Librarians out of 10. Okay, tell me about that. Why you tip over into your A range?
A?
I think 8 to 10 is an A, and then obviously there's S, which is like top.
Oh, I think 8.5 is A territory for me.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would be a B+. Or B1. Yeah, it's good fun for sure. It is definitely disconnected, and I think some of the characterization is a bit odd. I sometimes worry that every so often I think the character who we say this about most is Willow, is that her characterization in an episode isn't right. As in the voice she has in a given episode is wrong. And I'm concerned that maybe we're just imposing our own understanding onto Willow. Maybe she's just more flippant, more inconsistent than we like to think or something.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, anyway. So
it's a bias to keep an eye on, maybe.
For sure. But yeah, no, it's grand. I quite enjoyed it. Definitely enjoyable episode. I think that really pulled it.
Yeah, I have to say I enjoyed it a lot, even though I rated it a little bit lower. I don't think it was like the most important episode of Buffy, but I think I like when they lean into, to be honest, the fantasy elements of it. Sure. And this was a very genre heavy episode. And I think I've taken him for granted over the years, but I'm really appreciating how strong Spike is as an addition to the cast. Like, it is rare that a character will be added late to a show that will bring so much to it.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think he's great. So I think that's all for Buffy for this week. We advance to the Cordelia chase.
Let us advance to Cordelia chase.
So quite a significant episode of Angel. Hero, which is the episode in which Doyle leaves the show. Obviously we spoke with Glenn Quinn before, a very troubled first season in terms of his character, had a more significant arc, Seated, as being Angel's main sidekick for the show, had a number of personal troubles and professional troubles which caused Joss Whedon to write him out, and then died relatively soon after that in real life. I'm quite fond of this episode. I think it's very weak as a television episode in many ways, but there's a real effort to give Doyle a exit.
Sure.
And fundamentally what it is his entire backstory. You see this happen in genre shows sometimes. It's a very unique factor of a fantasy or science fiction show where they accelerate his entire arc and the entire backstory they had planned for him into one episode because he's leaving. So we find out over the course of one episode that he, obviously we know he's a half demon, but that we have flashbacks to when he was like a less reliable person. Some of his family members he didn't know about came to find him and told him that there was an enemy called the Scourge who was purging any half-breed demons because they believed they're pure blood demons, and asked him for help, and he didn't help them, and basically they ended up getting killed. All of these refugee demons is his greatest secret and his shame, etc. And the Scourge is back, and they're very broad and very specific Nazi. I wouldn't say allegory. They're just Nazis. They're demon Nazis, and they're purging all these demons, and then Doyle trying to help them escape. There's a whole thing about the half-breed demons thinking that Angel is the promised one who's going to save them, and there's a lot of dialogue and discourse about what constitutes a hero, about you don't know until you're tested, about standing up for people when the chips are down and all that. And then the kicker being that at the end, Doyle realizes that he has to be the hero. He takes the blow. He knocks Angel out of the way. He disarms the MacGuffin bomb that's going to burn out all the humanity, and saves everyone. And that's kind of it. It's an interesting episode in many ways.
He and Cordelia do have a kiss and kind of conclude that.
Yeah, fairly crucially, they have a kiss in which he passes his ability to receive visions from powers that be to Cordelia, which becomes her main gimmick, really, for the rest of the show. So it's problematic in many ways, not offensive, but in that acceleration, it paints a lot of things very broadly, and it does the thing which poorly handled allegories on genre shows often do, is that I'm all for a well-handled episode which uses, say the half demons as a way to show themes around things like racial purity and discrimination and all that kind of stuff, and fascism. But it mixes its metaphors a lot, and sometimes it uses language which is associated with gay people and queer people being oppressed. Sometimes it uses language associated with ethnic minorities or races being discriminated against, and sometimes it uses language associated with misogyny. So it's kind of picking and choosing. It's like, oh, you're just, I don't know, I can't remember the exact lines, but say, oh, you're just a chaser, or you don't even have any blood in you, and all this kind of stuff. And also, you've just outed yourself as a demon. It's kind of just taking a bit of everything. So that signals
it's not great.
Yeah, that signals to me that's kind of like, you tried a little bit. Positives of the episode are that I think, the message that they're trying to get across and the portrayal that they're trying to do is well intentioned. I think it's a decent exit for the character. I think
the final scene's quite touching.
Yeah, so they basically, at the top of the episode, in a lighthearted moment, they get him to record a commercial for Angel Investigations where he's trying to describe Angel as the hero. And they watch it again at the end after he died, and it has quite a touching line where the actor says, when the commercial is finished, he kind of turns the camera to Cordelia behind the camera and says, "Is that it? Am I done?"
Yeah,
and it's sad. It is sad.
Yeah, it's quite upsetting.
Some of the positives of the episode are that the demon design for the Scourge is actually really interesting. It's
very Hellraiser.
They put a lot of emphasis on like split open skulls and weird teeth.
And they're all very different to each other, which is very cool.
They're all very different to each other. And the actual deck scene where they have this like suspended energy bomb that's going to burn humanity out of people, and then he's like disarming it, but he's melting quite gruesomely while he's doing it.
It was gruesome.
It's a very unusual death for a main character. So yeah, Doyle, we hardly knew you. One of the, while subject to some tropes of Irish characters, one of the better Irish characters at this period. I
mean, it helps that he's portrayed by an Irishman.
Yeah, absolutely. And really what he gives the show is motivation for Cordelia and for them going forward as a narrative device, and opens the way for Wesley to be introduced.
Is Wesley in the next episode?
I don't know if it's literally the next episode, but his face is on this DVD disc of the DVD, so
That's funny.
He's here.
Yeah,
it's very soon. Yeah, but it was overall, I'll probably give it I'll give it an 8 failed feminist gestures.
Sure.
I think it's definitely one of the best episodes of the first season, and it tries very hard. And it was, when I was younger, it was a very memorable episode for me.
Fair. I'm going to give it a generous, I'm going to be generous and give it a 7 failed feminist gestures out of 10. It's maybe closer to a 6, but whatever. It was the ending scene is actually quite touching, and I don't hate the Doyle character at all, and I'm not happy to see him go or anything, and it does have that weightiness of Glenn, what's his name? Sorry, Glenn Quinn dying quite soon afterwards. Cordelia is quite great in the episode. Angel looks attractive, unfortunately, when he's trying to infiltrate the quote-unquote Nazis. I don't know. He just has a nice haircut. But otherwise...
Dave Boreanaz actually does an interesting thing, which I commented on, which is he basically portrays... He lies to the Nazi demons and says that he also hates half-breeds, even though he is, in their terms, a half-breed, and wants to help seek them out and burn them out for them. And he portrays an evil vampire, but not Angelus, just like a slightly dumb minion vampire that's quite like base and animalistic, and it's just it's another different version of the character he plays, which I think is quite good.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but that's it for that. We hardly knew you, Doyle, and on to better things.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this season gets better specifically, does it?
Better than this, maybe not, but Wesley's a great introduction, and there's some fun stuff coming.
The end of the season is pretty interesting.
Yeah, explosive. So I think that's everything for this week.
Great.
So once again, thanks so much for joining us.
Next week we're on to Hush.
We're on to Hush next week.
Yeah.
We'll have a lot to say about it. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you're safe and well. Out there in Radio Land, Podcast City. We heard today that, not heard today, but there was a thing about that all the podcast microphones have been sold out on Amazon.
Yeah.
But just please remember that we were uncool before this all happened.
Yeah. We're all straight, so.
Exactly. If you enjoyed the episode, please let us know. Tell your friends, tell your lesbian alliances. And to my lesbian alliance, I see you, I appreciate you. And we will, I think, talk to you next week for Hush on this podcast, which is called